So after my map is created, I've centered my prong wire along my map, and the first thing I'm going to do is make a small mark with my Sharpie marker on the wire where I want my first prong. I'm going to bring this up and change my focus so that you can see it. Okay, you can see that the Sharpie marker accounts for about 1 millimeter of space. So I'm going to take my flat nose pliers and I'm going to keep always to the left of every mark I put on this wire to stay consistent. I'm going to hold the wire with the very nose of my flathead plier. Using the very nose of my flathead plier helps me to keep each prong the same height. So working under the camera, I'm at a little bit of an odd angle, but you can see that I'm just using my fingers to push the wire vertical right at the edge of my plier. Then I'm going to change my plier position and grab the vertical wire, the vertical length. I'm going to squeeze and make sure that my wire is nice and square. And with my finger, I'm just going to push a very sharp 90-degree bend back in the wire to bring it back to horizontal. All the while I'm working to keep my wire facing forward, so no twisting in the wire as I work. And now after I have the wire moving horizontally again, I'm just going to grip the upper wire and assist it downward. This way I can get above it and squeeze my first prong together. So I'm taking the edge of my plier and I'm doing a very gentle and controlled squeeze to bring the two sides together, making sure that the wire does not overlap itself. You'll notice a small little bulkhead here at the top of the prong that's caused when the wire is squeezed closely together. So I also squeeze above the wire once I bring it together. You'll see it separates slightly as I flatten the head of that prong. And I'm going to grip it from the side again, squeeze it closed again, and then I always like to do 2 times on top just to make sure that I have a nice hardened prong, but also to make sure that it's nice and flat and together. So to return the wire to horizontal now, I'm going to grip the prong with my plier and use my finger to make a very, very close, sharp bend in the wire and bring it back to horizontal. So there's the creation of my first prong. I always also like to come below the prong and make sure that I've tightened up that forwarding edge. Okay? And you can see here that my prong is where I planned for it, and now I'm going to make a mark with my Sharpie marker about where to put the second prong, right here on my wire, and then I'll repeat this process. For my second prong, I'll just repeat the process. I'll grip the wire with the very nose of my flat nose plier, making sure that it's flush. And with my finger, I'll bring the leading wire forward to create half of my prong. Then I'll grip the wire vertically and I'll make a very sharp bend to bring the wire back to horizontal. I'll grip it from up top to help bring the wire down to meet its other half. And that just helps me to get above it so that I can squeeze this prong together. You want to make sure that the wire doesn't collide with each other and overlap each other. So squeeze gently and with some patience And then I'm going to come above it and squeeze to flatten the head of that prong. Then I'll come beside it again and squeeze to bring it together closer and to close the gap. And then one more time from the top. Then I'll align my plier and get my fingernail right into it. Notice that the nose of my plier is right up against the wire so that my prong height is the same all the way along this wire. I just used the edge of my plier nose to help keep myself consistent. And now I'll bring my wire back down to the plan, and you'll see that my prong landed exactly where I planned for it to. And now I'll move along to the third prong. I'll get my Sharpie marker and I'll make a small line on the wire about where that prong needs to be created. As we build each of these prongs, the wire length is getting shorter. I'm going to grip just to the left of my mark, and I'm using the blunt edge of my flat nose plier. This flat nose plier happens to be about 5 or 6 millimeter in length, which is the length I like for my prongs. These pliers come in many different lengths, or diameters I should say. And you can also use your chain link plier. If you don't have a flat nose plier, you can just mark a line across the tooth of your chain link plier to help keep your prong height consistent as you build them. Okay, and I'm just going to bring that down again for my third prong so that I can get above it and squeeze the prong together carefully. I'm going to come above it and squeeze it flat. You'll notice that it parts a little bit when I do that. Then I'll do my second squeeze along the sides, one more time at the top, and then once again using the nose of my plier to bring the wire back to a horizontal length. You'll notice all the while I'm working, the square wire is not twisted as I build these prongs. You're working to keep them, to keep the wire always square. And then I can make the mark for my next prong. And I'll do this consistently all the way down the wire, one prong at a time, to ensure that I get them exactly where I want them. And I'll continue to make these prongs in this way all the way through my map. And now all of my prongs are complete, and they are all living on my wire map exactly where I planned for them. So now it's time to bring your prong wire into unison with your frame wires.